Hi, welcome to the State of the Nation. I'm your host, Mike Sham. With me today is a long-time political activist, and if anybody has been following South African politics, has been around the game for a long time, and that is Dr. Phillip Dexter. Can I call you Phillip?
Please do.
If I sound like doctor, I feel like I have to lie down, so let's rather just go with Phillip.
And I'm not going to touch you. No, Philip's fine.
Phillip, now you at the moment are chairman of Armscore.
Yeah.
And, I've been following for years. You've been an outspoken opinion writer. You had days when you were louder, but, drew attention just recently with a bit of a spat that you had on in some of the media. I know that you and Ray Hartley had a bit of a backwards and forwards, and Greg Mills and a few people that you had a bit of words, opinion pieces written about. And it had largely to do with the Russia-Ukraine situation and the Lady R.
Yeah. Well, actually, the original spat was more about the role of the media.
Yes.
But then in the midst of it, the Lady R story broke.
Right.
And interesting, it wasn't a news story. That ship had been spotted a long
December.
time ago.
Yeah.
But obviously, there'd been a lot of speculation. And then this, what I can only describe as a blatant lie was peddled, that the ship had come to load weapons and ammunition to take to Russia, which was absolutely untrue. I mean, in terms of the Official Secrets Act, nobody's actually allowed to say what went on. But we do know that the ship was offloading cargo and not loading cargo. And then a statement was released showing that that this had been an order that had placed a long time ago for the Russians to deliver to us, and it was ammunition for the South African Special Forces, who, as you know, are fighting the rebels in Mozambique. So, I think it was totally unpatriotic, but also just blatantly dishonest. And the US ambassador's missile was clearly designed to hurt us. It wasn't done as a serious diplomatic intervention. It was just an act of blatant anarchy, and I liken it to delinquents who go around destroying public infrastructure. He's no better than that.
Now, you've been around diplomats a lot more than I have, but I have been around a few diplomats, and as the name suggests, they want to be quite diplomatic. Now, that was not diplomatic at all. Either the guy is committing professional suicide, or he had the backing to say what he said.
Well, he's still in his position. He's never been chastised properly by anyone in the US. There was a sort of weak statement from the US saying that, he wasn't supposed to say this. But something of that magnitude that has that economic impact, he really should have been recalled by the US. But the fact that he wasn't means that whatever he said was sanctioned by the US. And if we look at subsequent things, including today, 3 South African companies being sanctioned by the US. Quite clearly what's happening is the US is changing its relationship with South Africa in terms of its diplomatic relationship. The threat to remove AGOA, all of these kind of things. And as I said in my article, this is largely due to the fact that the US sees South Africa as a strategic theater that it must win. It wants to win public opinion in South Africa. It wants South Africa to influence Africa in its favor. And of course, it wants to limit the growth or destroy BRICS, because these 3 things represent a threat to US hegemony, And unfortunately, I think the approach is wrong. They should really be focusing on growing trade, investment, good relations between the US and other countries, including China and Russia. Nobody's going to win anything through war except the military-industrial complex in the US.
If we can go back to the ambassador's statement, you said, you said it was that it was a missile launched. That could be one thing. It could also be because it's true.
But there's no evidence to support it. And he said he had evidence, but he's not profited to date. And we know from the fact that, this was part of what goes on in the arms industry.
Yes.
The ship came here to offload. That's why it was done in broad daylight. I mean, just think about it. If we wanted to sell weapons and ammunition to Russia, we would not do it in broad daylight in Simonstown. We'd have to be the most idiotic people in the arms industry. We could easily put them in containers, ship them to Mozambique, and nobody would know the better. They would be sent out as machine parts. So anybody who thinks they're that stupid is also patronizing, because, you know, I think South Africa has been in the arms game for many, many years, both under apartheid and since. We have a brilliant set of regulations and policies that make it impossible for us to legally supply arms and ammunition to a country, you know, that's not approved. And because of our non-aligned stance, we said neither Ukraine nor Russia would be supplied with weapons during this period of conflict. We did the same with Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So, you know, it's nothing new. But I think the desperation of the US, and I think also they were assisted by people like the DA and others who spread this rumor about the ship. And, you know, the problem with that kind of politics is once you start it, everybody gets in on the act. It's very easy for us to invent stories, for our Secret Service to go around telling lies about John Steenhuisen or Phillip, Dexter or anybody else. But once you're in that realm, there's no chance of a fair fight, of democracy being, you know, the way to win things. Once you've allowed this, and that's why it was important that we put a peg in the ground, and he got slapped on the wrist by our foreign minister. Because if a diplomat misbehaves that way, and you allow that sort of behavior without any rebuke, you're just going to encourage them to do worse. So there's no evidence to support them. There is evidence that we were offloading ammunition in the form of an official statement. Now the president has appointed a commission of inquiry.
Which is keeping secret.
Well, it's not being kept secret, but it'll have to operate in a particular way because of the Official Secrets Act. But it will release its findings.
But why wouldn't you do it as a very transparent, open process? If we've
Mike,
got
there's no country in the world that would allow everybody to see what goes on in its defense industry and its arms industry and in the army. It's just not possible. You know, the fact that he's appointed an independent person is of itself, I think, enough for the public to feel that, look, we're doing something. No other country would do it. If this was America, they'd just tell you, bugger off.
Yeah, sure. If it's China, they would do the same.
It's a secret.
But
But we are, because I think we're a different kind of democracy. Some people think a bit too democratic. I'm not. I think it's a good thing. I think the president did the right thing. Let's have an independent person look at the evidence. Obviously, the Official Secrets Act will apply. So you'll never know what type of ammunition it was, because we don't want to give away to the rebels in Mozambique what we're going to shoot them with. You know, it stands to reason. We have to protect our soldiers. But I think the fact that an independent person will look at the evidence gives me confidence. You know, to tell you the truth, I don't even know exactly what was offloaded, because we protect our information very, very well in the sector. You know, there are people who handle that stuff, and we'll deal with the monetary side at Arms Corps in a case like this, because we would provision that stuff from whoever. And it's not just from Russia. We buy from China, Russia, America, the UK, you know, whatever is suitable for that particular kind of operation. But we cannot allow public scrutiny in the sense of an open book. It's just not possible.
And you can say without doubt that we loaded nothing onto the boat.
Look, maybe they did it illegally. That is possible. But in no way was anything legally done, because for that to happen, first of all, there would have to be a requisition for it. We would see that. Secondly, it would have to go to the National Committee on Arms Control, the NCACC. And the NCACC is a public process. It's transparent. It would have to give an approval, and there would have to be an end-user certificate. None of those things exist, which shows you that nothing was done legally. It is possible that some rogue element loaded things illegally. But as I said, they would have to be really stupid to load the Lady R.
Let's just say they did that. Somebody did do something illegal. Does that then make Ambassador Brigady correct?
No, it won't make him correct, because it wouldn't have been an official thing by the South African government if it was illegal. You must remember, even if a member of the government carried out an illegal act, it's that individual, it's not the government. you would have to have a cabinet minute that said the cabinet agreed for this to happen. I mean,
Sure, that's skating a very narrow
No,
moral
no,
line, isn't it? I'm
no,
saying
it's not.
it's a little bit like what we're hearing at the moment about state capture. No, it wasn't us; it was them.
No, it's different to state capture. What I'm saying,
I'm saying it's a moral line that we're skating if that's the case. Should
no, because look, there are things the government does officially. There are records of that. So there would be a cabinet minute, a decision. Somebody would have to sign. This happened even under the apartheid government, if you look at it.
Well, let's not use them as a yardstick.
Why it's an important yardstick is because that's how we caught them setting up death squads. You remember, there were minutes.
Exactly.
But there were individuals who carried out things without authorization or by verbal authorization, in which case there's no minute or record. Now, in that case, you cannot say it's the government unless you can find proof. And look, I know that you may think that that's skating on thin ice, but that's true of everything. It's like, imagine you told me to rob a bank, but you don't, there's no recording. I get caught robbing the bank. I say, no, Mike told me to. Well, the police are going to say, well, sorry, do you have any record of that? No. So the onus is on me. Now, if I'm the person who carried out that illegal act, and I was a soldier and I was given an instruction to do something illegal, first of all, I have the right to refuse that instruction. It's enshrined in our law. We have a right as a soldier to say, no, sorry, what you're asking me to do is illegal. Secondly, as an employee of armed corps of the state, a public servant, if somebody asks you to steal something or do something that's breaking the law, you have the right to say no. If, however, you do it, you are then the person responsible for the crime, unless you have evidence that you were told to do it. And that's the way the law works. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect system.
And if you've got the evidence, then someone will write a book about it, but you'll never go to jail.
Well,
maybe. That's sort of the South African way, isn't it?
Maybe, yeah, but you could go to jail.
Zondo had enough time to write 5 thick volumes.
I think people are still going to go to jail.
We'll have a little bet on that. But anyway, let's talk about our neutrality in the Russia-Ukraine thing. And this is a line that's getting stronger and stronger, where we claim to be neutral. Do you think that by claiming neutrality, are we not, there's always that vision that I have in mind that what we're doing is like, tag team wrestling. We watch it on TV and the guy's meant to stay in the corner while the other guy's in the ring. But instead he grabs the guy and pokes his eye while he's out of the ring, and the referee runs around and he theatrically says, well, I did nothing.
Well, no, it's not the same at all. Because
it is. I mean, one sovereign country invaded another, and then we're saying, no, guys,
but we're not tag teaming, because we're not. In no way are we tag.
By not condemning them, surely we're supporting them.
No, 2 sovereign countries
are
in a conflict. We're saying
they're not in a conflict. There's an invasion. There's a difference between a conflict. Well, look, conflict's what happens on the China-India border.
If you want to go down that road, we can. Because I don't believe it's that simple. I think that this war started a long time ago, and it involved a whole lot of indiscretions on the part of the Ukraine fascists who were killing Russian people. And I'm not saying that
were living in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Russian-speaking people living, Ukrainians that spoke Russian.
They were living in disputed areas because Russia had never accepted those areas as part of Ukraine. So like I'm saying, there's a long history to this conflict. It doesn't mean that I support Putin's decision to invade. I think it was the wrong decision. I've said that openly. But having said that, we as a country have taken a position that we don't believe that we should choose sides in this conflict for 2 reasons. One, it is in our conflict, and it's way more complicated than, something like the Palestinian-Israeli issue, just as a counterexample. Secondly, if we are to play any role in a peace process, in mediating and trying to bring about peace, if we had chosen sides, we wouldn't be able to do that. And I think that the truth in that position and this correctness of it has been borne out by what's happening with this African mission. You see, the countries that are all going there abstained from voting in the UN. If any of them had voted for Ukraine or for Russia, they wouldn't be accepted by the other party as being somebody who can mediate. Now, that's very different from tag teaming, because we're not going around poking somebody. We're not saying to anybody that it's a good thing to be in conflict. We're saying the South African government has countless times said, we don't believe this conflict should be happening. Stop. There should be a ceasefire. Let's talk. So It's very different. And I
But we
think,
refuse to condemn the invasion.
but we
We
can't
walked
condemn
that
it.
one back.
No, we
very
can't
quickly.
condemn it. If you condemn it, then you're not non-aligned anymore.
I don't see how you reach that conclusion. Because if there's an invasion, there's an invasion. That's
Well, that's
a straightforward thing.
That's your interpretation. I don't think that we all agree that it's as simple as an invasion. I don't think so. Because first of all, was Ukraine part of Russia or not? You have to start there.
No, well, I mean,
What do you mean never? Of course it was.
what I'm saying is that in 1991 there were two sovereign states, born, agreed, etc. And
But Russia never accepted that, and there were a whole lot of conditions to that, which were then violated by the Americans, by Ukraine, and by NATO. So, I would let me put it this way. Imagine if Russia started arming Mexico.
I don't think this is.
It's exactly the same.
I don't think it's the same at all.
It's exactly the same. What do you mean it's not the same?
Because I don't think it's the same thing, and I think that's a straw man argument.
It's not a straw man. I mean, look, with undisputed the Cuban
missile
crisis is a good example. America would never stand for a foreign power interfering in its neighboring countries in the way that NATO has interfered in Ukraine. Whether you agree with that or not, I don't believe it left Russia any alternative but to take military action. I wouldn't have done it if I was the leader of Russia. But I think given who they are, given the history and everything else, they came to that conclusion. Now, do I agree with it? No. But our government has taken a position. If you don't support it, that's fine. Vote for another government. But you cannot say that we are siding with the Russians. That is just a lie, and that's the kind of bullshit that Hartley and Greg Mills peddle. That's an American falsification, and it's done deliberately to discredit our government. And I will never, ever agree with that. I will defend our government to the hilt. I think non-aligned is the right position. Take it or leave it. If you disagree with me, we'll agree to disagree. But I'm not going to have an argument about is it an invasion or whatever, because we're never going to agree.
No. So let's move forward then, because obviously we are starting to pay a price for our position of this neutrality that we've got, and it could be could get quite painful.
I think so.
And you think it's worth going through that pain?
I think that one thing the struggle against apartheid taught us is that no matter what the pain, doing the right thing is the most important thing, because I think siding with America and agreeing to the American agenda would be devastating for this world. America wants to smash Russia, smash China. Do we want to be part of that agenda? Absolutely not. I think that's the worst thing you can do to this world. Why are we not promoting trade, peace, business? For a long time, America was investing in China and Russia. What has made it change is its fear that those countries are becoming more economically powerful than itself. We are not part of that American hegemony. We do not support America's international positions, and therefore we cannot go and defend it, and we can't collaborate with the Americans. If the Americans choose to punish us for that, then, one, we have the right to hit back, which we will, both diplomatically, economically, and politically. Secondly, yes, there will be pain, but there's no gain without pain. I think America will exacerbate the divisions in the world. It'll force BRICS to cohere as a much larger entity, and in the end, it's going to create a standoff in this world. I think Europe already has shown that it's not prepared to go all the way with America. It just won't do it. And I think any country that sides with the US at this moment of history is making a grave mistake. They think short-term gain, like doing business with the US, is going to be better than having a peaceful world and having a world in which there is no conflict. I don't agree with that. I think we have a much, much higher duty to humanity, and I think as a country we've got to play a particular role, which is to be principled. And there's always a price to be paid for being principled. Do I relish the thought? No. Do I want it? No. But it's not up to us, it's up to the Americans. If they choose to be bullies, as they've done now, sanctioning our country, starting to threaten us, that they'll remove AGOA, etc., that's their choice as a nation. But they must understand there are consequences for that.
So, yeah, I suppose the word principle can have meanings. I don't think for somebody living in downtown Kiev, sort of sheltering from missiles, feels those principles.
Well, yeah, sure, but I think it's a different matter because, once war has broken out and there's an armed conflict, it's a very different situation from when you're at peace. We are not at war with America, but it's choosing to threaten us, to tell us what to do, to tell us to toe the line. Now, why would you do that in a state of peace? I think the mere fact that you're doing that shows, in fact, that your policy is not peaceful at all. What you have is what von Clausewitz called war by any other means. America has been in a perpetual state of war against the world. If you look, it's over 300 invasions of countries, sovereign nations. So people can say it's whataboutism, but I think America needs to be held accountable for those actions. As we sit here, it's imposed sanctions on Venezuela, sanctions on Cuba, all these countries. Has it changed those countries? Not at all. In fact, it strengthened the resolve of those people to stand up against America.
Well, it strengthens the governments of those particular
and
countries,
the
not
people.
so much the resolve. Well, I still see Cubans getting into boats. You still see Venezuelans walking in caravans, they call them, to go and get to America.
You get economic migrants from everywhere. They come from Africa.
Sure.
There's nobody threatening them there.
Yeah.
So people move. There are migrants for many, many reasons.
Yeah.
And I think primarily economic.
Yes.
But that doesn't change the fact that, yes, it's not nice, it's not easy to be a Cuban or Venezuelan. But is it better to be an independent Cuban and to be poor or to be a slave to the US? I think I'd rather be independent and poor.
Well, we're all quite independent, but my word, we're getting quite poor under the current South African government. Now, you've been quite close. You've had an interesting political career, right, where you were very active in South Africa, and you weren't in the South African political scene, member of the ANC, NEC back in the day. Then was on the wrong ticket in the 2007 Polokwane conference, and were one of the members that broke away to form COPE. Came back in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, and a bit of a lower profile, although you were part of Cyril Ramaphosa's team. What do you make of Cyril Ramaphosa and his performance as president?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, let me say, I don't think I was on the wrong ticket. I think I was on the right ticket, but we lost.
Yes.
There's a difference,
Yeah.
But, I think the president has had a tremendously difficult job because to take over after, what had happened to the country under the Zuma government with the state capture and, all of the things that the economic fallout from that was never going to be easy. Do I agree with everything he's done? No. And I think there are some valid criticisms of him. But I think on balance, if you look at it, one, he's not corrupt. He's tried to make sure that we've made fighting corruption a key policy of the government. Two, I think he's tried to steer an economic course which is focused on bringing investment into the country, promoting growth. And I think he's been quite successful in that regard if you look at, some of the things that have happened in the country. Where I think he really has not performed is in the transformation of the state and rectifying a lot of the problems that were there, some of which predate state capture, obviously. Some of the inefficiencies in the government. They weren't things, I think state capture made them worse. If you take the functioning of Home Affairs, for example, it was never good, let's face it. But certainly under that period of state capture, many things got worse. And then you had institutions being compromised, like the SIU, the Scorpions, the crime intelligence and the police. So there are very real fundamental problems, and I don't believe the government as a whole has dealt with any of those things effectively. And I think that is a huge problem for us as a country, because if you don't have effective government, how on earth are you going to be able to manage an economy like we have? You just look at, they passed the National Health Insurance Bill. We all agree that healthcare should be universal. Everybody should have the right to healthcare. But do we have the confidence that the government in the current form can execute that policy and deliver? I think there are very few of us who do. We are more concerned. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we live it.
Yeah, we like the idea of universal healthcare, but can this government deliver it in its current form? I don't think so. And I think that's what worries a lot of people, and certainly worries me, and I think a lot of people in the ANC. You know, the ANC is it's a broad church, but within it there's a lot of criticism and self-criticism. So somebody like me, who's openly critical, you know, I'm allowed to be a member of the ANC. I'm allowed to have my say. It doesn't mean I can trash the government and, you know, publicly go against every position of the ANC. But we're allowed to make valid criticisms and to argue. And I think there's great concern in the ANC membership. You know, the new Integrity Commission where Frank Chikani's just been elected, you saw what he said. We don't want to be governed by criminals. Now, that's the spirit that I want to see in the ANC. That's what a lot of us have been waiting for, is leadership to come like that. Will he now act on it? That's what we want to see.
Well, if he wouldn't act on the Zondo Commission, what gives you any confidence that he's going to act on future criminals?
Who wouldn't act on the Zondo Commission?
The state apparatus. I mean,
no, that's not true. They are acting on it.
On the minions.
No.
He's put people...
I don't think Jacob Zuma is a minion.
No,
well, I don't think
but hang on a second. Jacob Zuma's being taken he's having to answer arms deal problems, right? Hasn't even got to state capture problems yet. You know what I mean?
No, but the point is that in this, look, we're one of the few countries that's actually charged a president. The US, it's the first time they've ever charged a president. So I think as South Africans, we're often overly critical. Let's be fair. We have been dealing with corruption to the best of our ability up to this point. The Zondo Commission is volumes.
Yes.
That people are going through it now and drawing up charges. We are seeing charges against people like Ace Magashule and so on. Yes, there is a time lag, but I don't think that's fair to say that nobody's doing anything.
Well,
the NPA have said they have a capacity problem because they don't have enough prosecutors to deal with the cases they have and the cases now arising from the Zondo Commission. Yes, we want more money to go to the NPA, but you've got to find that money.
Why does it always come down to that? But what I'm saying is, if you've got half the prosecutors that you need, surely then you're going to prosecute half the number of cases.
Which is pretty much what we're doing.
But we just don't see them. Instead, what you do see is...
Mike.
But Phillip, what you do see is you see the appointment of somebody like Zizi Kodwa as a deputy minister. You're seeing people like...
no, but that's wait, let's separate things.
Right.
Are people being prosecuted?
Yes.
The answer is yes. You see Jacob Zuma, you see Ace Magashule, you see lots of people being prosecuted.
So if they're on the wrong slate, they're getting prosecuted?
No.
Zizi Kodwa, nothing. Those kind of people.
Hold on. What is Zizi Kodwa supposed to be prosecuted for?
Well, I mean, he took money from one of his service providers. Right?
So
he even admits it.
So that's in the state capture.
Yet, how can the president then appoint him?
Will he be prosecuted for that? I think he will be, because when they get to that point in that process that they're dealing with, he will be prosecuted.
So how can a president then appoint him?
Because one,
innocent until proven guilty.
Number one. Number two, there has to be prima facie evidence.
He admitted it on TV.
Well, I don't think he didn't admit that he had done something wrong.
I got a loan, just never paid it back.
A loan.
Oh, okay.
Fine. Now
you can lend me money, Phillip, and we'll pay it back
but you know the way our criminal justice system works. So what will happen now is that charge sheet will be drawn. At that point, the step-aside rule will come in and he'll have to stand down. Would I have appointed him if I was the president? Probably not, given all that noise. But you see, again, that's a different matter. The president's prerogative. Now the president must take responsibility for that, and he'll have to pay the price for it as well.
Okay, so let's talk about the president himself. You said at least he's not corrupt. Well, I'm not 100% sure you or I could have got away with what happened at Phala Phala.
What happened at Phala Phala, in your view?
In my view, once again, somebody bought something that they just didn't take delivery of. They gave you cash, which I doubt if you paid VAT on it. It certainly doesn't seem like it. What I'm saying is the SA Revenue Service would be right up my anus if I did a deal like that.
Well, okay, there's a number of things about Phala Phala. One is I don't agree with you that the person didn't take delivery.
He didn't. He even said so. I forgot about it.
No, he intended to, and the cattle were set aside for him. So the second thing is, were laws broken? Well, SARS said not to their records. They've come out and made a statement, and they would have investigated. And I don't think SARS would have said that if a law had been broken. Thirdly, I think that there's so much about Phala Phala that is exaggerated and is in the imagination of the people who laid the criminal charges. That, for example, what sum of money was involved? We hear it's billions. In actual fact, it's a few $100,000. Yeah.
$580,000.
The point is, it's a principle. But
cash in bag.
Yeah, that means they must account for that money. But the fact that it's been inflated, that you've heard all these different stories, to my mind, I think there's a lot more to this. And I have a suspicion of my own as to what has happened and how it happened. And I think the process of investigation will show that. I think that there's what do they call, a dirty hand in this business, and it's not the president.
So why would Parliament shut down an inquiry?
Well, they said that route of the inquiry wasn't the right route to go because there was an investigation by the police. And I mean, if you think about it, that's true. There's a criminal investigation. Parliament can't hold an inquiry until that investigation is completed. You can't run parallel processes. It doesn't work in a democracy.
So let's move forward then. Phillip, we're heading towards probably our most important general elections ever, right?
After 94.
No, I would say more important than 94. And I'll tell you why I say, because by the time those elections rolled around, and you and I were participants in that, right? We knew kind of the outcome. There was no big surprise. It wasn't like, the change had been softened over the preceding couple of years. We knew exactly what was the outcome. And that's why I say, with respect, 1994 was symbolic. It was an occasion. It was memorable. It was all those wonderful things. But this one could be even more important because as it looks at the moment, it looks like the ANC could fall below 50% if one looks at the local government election outcome last time, 2021, and one imagines that their performance hasn't been stellar since then, right? What's your view on the coming general election?
Well, let me first say I don't agree with you. I think 1994 was a very important election and the most important election in the history of our country because it brought about democracy. And I don't think anything.
They always say a democracy is tested by a contested election. Now,
sure,
the first one,
but
I was watching the thing where
I think for the majority of South Africans, 1994 changed their lives.
Okay.
But I think you're right that what's coming is a very significant moment in our democracy because the outcome is not certain. I think there is a view that the ANC will be below 50% and we'll have to now look at coalitions at a national level. And I do think that we're into a moment of great uncertainty. Obviously, as an ANC member, I don't want to see the ANC go below 50%. And I think that will be very bad for our country. If you look at coalition governments at local level, they've been an absolute disaster, with few exceptions. So hopefully the legislation that they're drafting to change that at local level, to govern coalitions will help. But I don't think you could do that at national level. So I think we are in for a rough ride because we've got this geopolitical situation, which is, great uncertainty throughout the world. We've got Africa, which is more and more in turmoil, if you think over the last few years. And now in South Africa, we're going to have this uncertainty. So I do think, we should brace ourselves for very, very stormy weather. Am I demoralized or despondent? No. Because I think every country goes through these kind of challenges and crises. I truly believe that we're a very strong country. I think we're a strong democracy. And I think we have good institutions, at the level of the government, the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and we have a great constitution. And I have real faith in that constitution. I watched a very interesting TikTok clip that somebody posted today about a woman was likening South Africa as to being a car that was going to be driving over a cliff.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
In fact, I interviewed that lady earlier today.
And I thought she was absolutely spot on because what she's saying is right. You see, I think what we should really be focusing on is defending our constitution and the democracy, because without that, we have nothing. It'll be anarchy, could be a fascist government, who knows what would come after that. And that means we have to rise above our narrow political interests and look at what do we do to defend the constitution. So come what may, whoever wins that election, the national election in 2024, we must all defend the outcome, and we must support whatever comes in the form of the next government. You know, if it's a coalition, a government of national unity. If the DA wins the majority, I'm going to have to accept it, you know, and I'm going to have to still stay loyal to the South African Constitution and to the state. And for me, that's the most important thing. Of course, in the 5 years after that, I hope the ANC would win back political power. But what we must never do is undermine that and do anything to undermine the Constitution. It's been hard for us to accept defeat as the ANC in local governments, but we've learned it. We lost the Western Cape. You know, I've been involved in Western Cape politics since 1994. It was extremely painful when we lost the city of Cape Town, when we lost the Western Cape province. But we've soldiered on. We've learned to be in opposition. And if that's the case nationally, so be it. We must pay the price for the decisions that we've made. Even if I individually didn't agree with decisions that Cyril Ramaphosa made, I'm in the ANC. So if the ANC loses, I have to accept responsibility for that. And I have to conduct myself in the right way, defend the Constitution, fight for political power in a democratic way.
Do you think that the ANC have been a good opposition where they've been in opposition? And
have they been an effective opposition? Is it more like it?
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have collapsed in the Western Cape, you know, all the way down to, I think, 18%, which is a collapse.
I don't think that's got to do with them being in opposition. That's got to do with some internal problems in the ANC, which were there prior in 1994. And I think there were very bad interventions made by the national level of the ANC when they removed political leaders and the like. And I think we've seen that in other provinces. But I believe the ANC is growing. It's back on its feet in the Western Cape. I think they're going to a Congress now in July, and hopefully they'll merge with a good leadership. So I believe that's part of democracy, you know. The ANC has had to reinvent itself many, many times over.
And I mean, their role in some of these metros where they've lost the majority has been, it's hardly been collegial, has it?
Yeah, but I think that's true of all the political parties, and that's why I'm saying I think this new legislation is important, because whoever's not in power tries to collapse the government, whether it's the DA, Patriotic Alliance, what's this other lot, Action SA. They all, like, you know, a den of thieves plotting in dark corners. And I don't think any political party has behaved in any way exemplary around this issue, you know. So I think I don't condone that either. I think we should accept the results, and we should learn to be in opposition. Of course, if the possibility exists to form an alliance and to govern, you must take that opportunity, but it's the way you do it that's important, you know.
Well, I think that we may disagree on many things, but I think we're going to agree on two issues. One is that I think that, and I had my disagreements when I spoke to somebody from the Patriotic Alliance, I think that the Constitution, you know, before one starts talking about death penalties or suspending constitutions, the Constitution allows for good governance.
Absolutely.
Right? And all that's happened is that you've got a government that looks the other way when it suits them. And if the Constitution is applied as it's written, it would be, it's adequate in solving
many
most of our problems.
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
And I think that South Africans are a noisy bunch.
Yeah.
And, you know, to those people that are seeing impending doom by people that like to wear uniforms, it's hard because everybody's going to have their say. What you need for those people to get the microphone is for everybody to be compliant and quiet, and I don't see that happening in South Africa.
No, I agree with you. No, I think that's a great spirit of South Africans. I think the fact that we do make a noise, that we speak up, that we cause trouble, for me, that's a very, very positive thing about South Africans, because politicians should never feel comfortable. You know, they should always be understanding that we're prepared to remove them from whichever political party. So inside the ANC, I must contest and remove politicians who don't do their job. Secondly, inside the country, whether you're in local, provincial, or national government, I think there's not enough of that. We should have more noise, We should have more effervescence, and South Africans should march more, and there should be more political action. You know, somebody said it the other day, protesting and voting are not things that are in opposition to each other. They're complementary, and we learned that in the struggle against apartheid. I think it's great when you see mothers of children, grandmothers marching when it was against Zuma or to save South Africa or whatever. I may not agree with what they're saying, but the fact that we have a democracy, that you can do that, still go home and not be arrested and taken to a torture chamber, means that our democracy is healthy. And that's what I really, really believe we should be promoting and supporting.
Phillip, Dexter, great place to leave off. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to everybody that's watched this episode of The State of the Nation. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel. If you really like us, please join our supporters club. And if you want to hear a bit more about what's going to happen in the next election, join us at our live breakfast on the 10th of July, where we'll have some people like Herman Mashaba, John Steenhuisen, Musi Maimani, and a few analysts putting them to the sword. Please come and find more information below this video. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you at the next State of the Nation. Thank you.